Alright, so we're into the next video here, and this is Ben with Free CodeCamp speaking. If you just jumped into this video randomly, please go back and watch the intro if you'd like. Otherwise, please feel free to skip around videos. So we're just going to dive into the headline with H2 element. Over the next few lessons, we're going to build an HTML5 cat photo web app, piece by piece. The H2 element, which we'll be adding in this step, will add a level 2 heading in the web page. This element tells the web browser the structure of the website. H1 elements are often used with main headings, H2 generally used with subheadings. There's also H3, H4, H5, and H6 elements, which indicate different levels of subheadings. There's an H2 tag that says cat photo app. Add an H2 photo tag that says cat photo app and create a second HTML element below the H1 hello world. Okay, and then we also have our objectives down here. You should create an H2 element. Alright, so that maps with what they're asking here and what they're mentioning there. H2 element should have a closing tag. Alright, so let's dive into this real fast. Let's kind of break it down. So in essence, what they're saying is we have, for headings, multiple different levels or essentially default sizes in our web browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm just copying and pasting these. Copy with Control-C, paste with Control-V, and I'm just changing up these tags. Feel free to follow along as I'm doing it. Pause the video as needed to make any changes necessary. But I just want to kind of bring every element out that they had mentioned. So the H1, H2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. And as you can see, thanks to Free CodeCamp, it does display things nice and tidy for us on the side. So as you can see, I just hit F11 to kind of minimize everything in the browser, make life a little bit more simple for us. So as you can see, the base style does start out with H1. So the lower the number, essentially, or the closer to 0, the larger it's going to be. So 1 is the largest, 2 is typically the second largest, and then you have these, which are kind of used at a web developer's discretion. So we're not even going to worry about those right now. But I just wanted to give you this nice kind of cascading effect and show you that, in fact, if you do these subsequent or heading elements, that you do get different sizes by default. Now, if you want to change those default styles and sizes later on, you can do that through HTML or through CSS. But let's keep it simple. Let's just focus on these first two and follow through the way that they have things set up for us. So it's saying you should create an H2 element. Well, through our copy and paste process, we already did that. So we do have an H1 and an H2 element, so we can check that off. Let's see, H2 element should have a closing tag. Okay, well, this is the entire element, and we have our opening tag and our closing tag. And the only difference there, as you might notice, is just this slash. So we're saying, hey, open H2, close H2. In other words, open heading, close the heading. Alright, and let's see. The H2 element should have the text cat photo app. So I'm just double clicking on this. I'm going to right click and copy. You can also double click to select the word, and then just do Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste. Or if you're on a Mac, Command-C, Command-V. Okay, so we've finished up to this point. Now it's saying your H1 element should have the text hello world. Okay, cool. Well, here's our entire H1 element, and it does inside the tags have the text hello world, so we're good there. And your H1 element should appear before your H2 element. Well, luckily we did that. Heading 1, heading 2. So we're good there. So what we're going to do then is run the tests, and as you can see, everything looks good. So far so good. But before we proceed, let me dive into this really fast. So I'm going to highlight this entire element, Control-X to cut, Control-V to paste, and I'm going to mess up the order in which they tell us to do things. Because initially they're telling us, hey, we want to put the larger header, the h1 header, above the h2 header element, which makes sense. From a visual perspective, you definitely want the larger one there. But let's see what happens in FreeCodeCamp if you do mess up the prompt, or let's say, for example, you get a typo or something of that nature. So we're just going to run the test, and as you can see, everything here passes, except for the fact that your h1 isn't above the h2. So luckily they do provide some decent feedback on this. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace it as necessary. And in this one, what I'm going to do is just create another issue. So instead of specifying that this is a level 2 header, I'm just going to put H. Now H, to my knowledge, isn't valid. So I'm going to run the test and let's see what sort of error code we get back. Okay, so this is throwing a few more things at us. And typically when I encounter errors, I like to just kind of go line by line, step by step. I find that it helps to debug or to resolve the issue that we're running into. Debugging is a huge part of coding, and I highly recommend getting familiar with running into error messages. And it's easier said than done, especially for beginner, but try not to take error messages personally. You're a developer. You are going to make mistakes. This happens with any developer, whether or not you are a senior developer who's been in the industry for a handful of years, or you're just starting out. So treat errors and those sorts of things just as additional directions that you have to follow, as opposed to, oh no, I screwed something up, or something that you might take personally, because it's not personal. The computer is very simplistic and definitely wants you to input things exactly how it wants them, and if it doesn't, it will give you error messages. But again, these error messages are basically a nice little roadmap to help us resolve our issues. Okay, so after that tangent, let's jump back into this, fix this issue, and go from there. Now, normally I would just jump in here and say, hey, I know what the issue is, so let's fix it and proceed. But I also want to kind of, again, like I said, get you familiar with this. So it's saying you should create an H2 element. Okay, so maybe that means that we don't have an H2 element. Alright, now let's look at what else we have over here. Your H2 element should have a closing tag. Okay, so we don't have an H2 element, and we don't have a closing tag for an H2 element, so those make sense. The H2 element should have cat photo app. Well, I have cat photo app right here, but what about H2? Well, that's because it's actually looking specifically for H2. So even if you have the text within a different element, that's not going to fix the issue for you. So let's go ahead and just resolve this kind of step by step. So it's saying we don't have an H2. So I just put in H2. Let's run it once more. Okay, well cool, we fixed that issue and it removed one of these errors. So let's just go step by step. H2 should have a closing tag. Well, here's my H2. Okay, got a closing tag, but it's not referencing closing the initial H2. So let's fix that and run again. And hey, we got the same result that we had expected if we had done it properly. So hopefully this highlights a little bit how to go and fix issues if you do run into it. For myself, I have dyslexia, minor dyslexia, so I find it challenging to spell things properly from time to time. So, like, let's say, for example, I didn't copy and paste over cat photo app and I just put cat photo A. That's going to also give me an error. And like I said, I've been coding for a handful of years, and that's still a pretty common one for me. So don't worry about it. You're starting off great. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of full screen here and just pause our video. We'll move on to the next section together. Thanks for watching.